to approve the minutes. Hopefully, hang on. So do I have a motion to approve the March minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? Great. The minutes are approved. Thank you.
This was James who made the motion.
Thank you.
So if it's all right with Rod, I'm gonna start the meeting. My name is Jack Eaton. I'm the executive director of CARD. We're gonna change the agenda just moderately here. Right after the EPA update section, we're going to discuss the new consent judgment, which is item 4B. No,
I changed it, Jack.
You changed it. Oh, okay.
Or changed back
All right.
the way you wanted it.
Alrighty. So, is there anyone present representing the EPA? Seeing no one, I know that Congresswoman Dingell's representative is here. If you'd like to go ahead.
Yep. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you again. This is Georgia Frost from Congresswoman Dingell's office. I did want to start by saying that the Congresswoman herself does plan to join this meeting between 6:30 and 6:45-ish. I'm sure you can imagine she has a very busy schedule, but she wanted to get on to state some things, especially about the consent judgment. So I was hoping that if at all possible, she could speak a bit when she's able to join. She does have the information to hop on, so I can also flag for everyone when I see her get on the call.
If you would just mention it in the chat window, I will call on her as soon as she appears.
Okay. Yep, I can do that. I did have something else I wanted to share as well. Thank you to Kathy Griswold and some of the others who had flagged some of the concerns about the consent judgment for us, just so we had the ability to review what everyone's concerns were. And I saw the email chain also about people talking about the consent judgment. And I just wanted to share some thoughts from our office at this time about the consent judgment. And I believe that the Congresswoman will also be talking about the same thing when she jumps on. So you'll hear a bit of information from us today. Of course, I'm also here to learn about your priorities when it comes to this and give that information to the Congresswoman. So you have my word that I'll be taking very diligent notes to make sure that she's on the same page. But I just wanted to share that the office knows that the highest priority is to get Gelman under the enforceable requirements, starting with that 7.2 PPB standard. And the new consent judgment might not be everything that the community feels is needed, but due to the Court of Appeals order throwing out the judgment that holds Gelman to the more protective standard, we feel that this is necessary without delay. And there's definitely support, we know, for the EPA taking over the site. And talking about that and updating the consent judgment with that was always anticipated as a step that would be taken before the EPA completes the multiple year investigation that it has. At this time, though, there's no information on behalf of the EPA that the entry of the updated consent judgment interferes with the EPA's work. So they have not indicated that to anyone, which I think is good news in that context. They said that getting the matter out of the active state court litigation might make the transition for the EPA smoother, which would be great. And we've gotten a couple of concerns. Again, thank you for everyone who reached out. Please know that over my work cell and my email, I'm always accessible that way. And we want to make sure we're getting this information to the Congresswoman as quickly as possible. And I just wanted to say that we understand the concerns around specifically the page 2 language of the consent judgment. I know there was an effort to kind of put those two next to each other to see the comparison there, specifically in the clause about the properly protecting the public interest point. But it turns out that similar language has been included in all of the previous versions of the consent judgment since 1992, just in highly varied spots. But the implication legally sounds like it will be the same thing. And language affirming that a consent order or agreement is reasonable and protective is expected because the law requires a determination from EGLE that, quote, the consent order is in the public interest, will expedite effective response activity, and will minimize litigation. So we do have the preface for why something like that might be included. We also wanted to share that neither the environment nor public health are served if nothing is done to fill the void created by the Court of Appeals order that would allow Gelman to operate under the outdated consent judgment from 2011. And the Congressman did also want me finally to share that the EPA is continuing to move through the NPL listing process for the Gelman site, and that it sounds like at this point, EGLE has no reason to anticipate that entry of the updated consent judgment that would undermine the process. I know there's some representation from EGLE here as well, so perhaps that could be addressed at a later point as well. But I did just want to share those things with the group about what we have. And if you've got any questions for our team on that, you can feel free to private message me or email me. I can put contact information in the chat, and I'll make sure that everyone on my team who works on this issue and the Congresswoman herself are aware of what other thoughts that you have, because it's really important to us, and this is the best forum we have for getting that information. So that's what I have to share at this time. And again, the Congresswoman will be joining a little bit later on as well. So that is what I've got right now. Thank you.
So thank you. And I want to make an offer that members of the executive board would be willing to hold a Zoom chat with you if you as you come up to speed, have questions that you think would benefit from a group discussion. I don't know that this meeting is the best place for that, but as you learn this stuff, questions will arise, and we want to make ourselves available to you so that you feel comfortable with the subject matter. So thank you. I did not see Dan Bicknell log on. Dan, are you here?
Jack, I don't, this is Mike. I don't expect Dan to appear. He had an issue come up this morning, and so he thought he might not be able to attend.
Okay. So before we dive into our usual EGLE update, I want to open up a discussion on the consent judgment that the state and the polluter have signed and will be submitting to the court. I want to say thank you to the Congresswoman's staff for clarifying some points there. But for me, reading through the new consent judgment, I think this is proof that the state is incapable of adequately addressing the problem that we have. And so I'm not alarmed by the CJ. I think that it's just further proof that the state is incapable of addressing the problem that we have grappled with for 3 decades now. So feel free to raise your hand if you have anything that you'd like to offer. I thought I saw a hand.
There's multiple hands up.
So I'm not seeing them. Can somebody?
Yeah, this is Josh Mosier with EGLE.
Josh Mosier first, then Vince Caruso, then Jeff Hayner, then Mike Moran, then Roger Rayle.
All righty. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, hi. So I just really quickly just wanted to say thanks to Georgia. She took several of my talking points, which is fine. With regards to the CJ, and it's been no surprise. It's been our goal the whole time since we revised the cleanup standard, first with an emergency rule, and then with formal promulgation to the 7.2. I mean, we sat down with Gelman in 2016 and 2017 to talk about that, and they voluntarily came to the table to try to work something out. And Jack, I mean, I appreciate your comment. I don't know if I appreciate the wording that the state is incapable. So yeah, it does demonstrate that, there are limitations to the state law under Part 201 and what we can require. And so, it's our sense that this is compliant with state law now. This is what is necessary to meet the objectives of the original and this consent decree using the lower standard. It is not, clean up of all the dioxane contamination. And yes, we still do support EPA on doing their assessment and proposing it for the NPL. And it's my understanding that they are currently working on their site assessment report. We don't have it in hand yet to review at the state, but the EPA is working on it. But again, we really want to make sure that Gelman and the decisions at the site are being made with the lower criteria, being the driving force and not going back to the 85. And we do agree also that the fact that the case is in litigation, it does need to end at some point if we do want EPA to take over. It is a smoother transition. There are still lots of things that have to happen, but it can get really mixed up if we're still in active litigation when it's time for EPA to take over. And, not knowing what, at the end of the day, what the remedy records of decision, they call it, will be for this site, but, with the goal of aquifer restoration, maybe the EPA can require more aggressive things to get closer to that goal. I don't know if it can be accomplished. We're far away from that decision. But yes, Part 201, the state does fall short of requiring that. But we believe what we did negotiate does meet the objectives of the no expansion and does meet the objectives of the GSI. And so we're just putting that out there that we needed to do this to hit this milestone, to get them current. And we understand that our current state law does not provide everything that the community wants, but we do believe what we entered is lawful and consistent with Part 201 today.
Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to make that sound personal to the.
No, I know. No,
I know the limitations that you all operate under. I do have a question about the CJ. In a couple of places, it sets a standard of 500 parts per billion as the starting point for terminating the extraction and treatment from certain wells. Where in the state law or regulations does the 500 parts per billion appear?
It does not. The state law and regulations don't get that specific as far as, technical remedies and deciding what is, appropriate from, how many monitoring wells you need, purge wells you need, what rates you have to pump. That's all just based on what you know about the site and what's sufficient to meet the goal, of keeping the plume within the prohibition zone, migrating the surface waters within GSI criterion, and things like that. So it's more of a performance standard that's been worked on over time. It's not a regulation or a criterion or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Roger, you have your hand up.
I think someone else is before me because I have lots.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can see the queue under participants at Vince, then Jeff Hayner, then Mike Moran, then Roger.
Oh, can you hear me?
So then Vince is next, right?
Can you hear me?
Yes. I can.
Okay. So yeah, I think my question is EPA bound by any of these CJs? Can they override any restrictions that the CJs may have introduced, including the one paragraph Kathy Griswold made point that it almost sounds like they're circumventing EPA control of the site if and when they take it over. I think CARD, may consider not supporting the CJ depends on the discussion today. And I think the consent to judgment was not adequate, and I think the state is not protecting Ann Arbor and and Scioto Ann Arbor Township. Thank you.
So I'm not sure if you signed on late or what, but both Georgia and Josh explained that the contents of the CJ will not interfere with the EPA's process. Go ahead, Jeff.
That was one of the major questions people had, I think.
Yeah.
This works. Can you hear me this time?
I can.
Anybody? Oh,
yes.
Awesome. So I guess I scroll up and down our attendance, our participants thing here, and I continue to not see anybody from the city of Ann Arbor here that might be in the know. Does anybody know if city council or any other intervening parties have met or had discussions about this prior, or had any kind of input or modification input into this? I mean, I think everybody remembers how we were able to get everybody together in those rooms and have these kind of mass meetings where everyone was looking out for their municipal water systems and by extension the public. And so I'm just wondering, does anyone know if there has been any input from any of the intervening governments about this?
I can answer that. And the Court of Appeals said that the so-called interveners didn't have a right to be at the table, and sent the matter back to be discussed solely between the state and the polluter. And so
sure, but it doesn't mean they can't give some input, right? Somehow.
Well,
they're muted.
They are muted, and maybe I'll let Danielle Allison-Yoakum from the Attorney General's office is here today. Brian couldn't be with us, but Danielle's here. And yeah, the interveners couldn't be at the table actively negotiating and talking, but it doesn't mean we didn't. Brian, I believe Brian did speak to several of the attorneys and listened, but I don't know to what extent that happened. But technically the interveners were not interveners, so they went back into confidential negotiations between Gelman and the state. So
that's correct. Josh is correct there. And I apologize, I have a bit of a cold, so I might blabber a little bit, but hello, my name's Danielle Allison-Yoakum. I'm an assistant attorney general in the Attorney General's office here in place of Brian this evening. The interveners under the Court of Appeals order did not have a seat at the table. In negotiating with Gelman, we tried to keep as much in the consent judgment that they had previously advocated for, in hopes that those interests would be as protected as they could be without them actually having a seat at the table.
Thank you. Did that answer your question? All righty. Oops, I've lost my list. Just a second. Mike Morin. You're mute, Mike.
There we go. I wanted to start by saying that we had submitted, Ann Arbor Township, with Dan's help, had submitted a document that outlined all of the objections we had to the proposed CJ4 when it was presented to the court. And let's just say I'm not going to say anything about those because none of those are resolved at this point in time, other than to say the state has never had a remedial investigation to make a plan as to how to deal with it. It's been dealt in a completely ad hoc manner, and that continues to today. So none of that's resolved, and I'm not even, let's just say that every one of those objections I still hold. But looking at the comparison of that document to this document, it's even worse. Insofar as Ann Arbor Township is concerned, the eastern remediation goals are simply removed. The only thing that's left is a prohibition zone. And where there used to be a prohibition zone and a method of establishing how and under what circumstances to extend or permit extension of that prohibition zone, those are now all completely tossed aside. You've left in there a method, but you've completely taken away any of the protective issues in the method. So for example, it used to say that you had to have, that you could extend it on proof of compelling circumstances. It still says that. But in the past, the document, when first presented, said, and the first version, the 2020 version, said that the standard for that, the legal standard, was clear and convincing evidence, which is the very highest standard in civil law. It's akin in criminal law to proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And what's it replaced with in this one? Nothing. What that means is the standard that would be used is preponderance of an evidence, which is a smidgen more than 50%. So that's been a very substantial reduction in how the prohibition zone is expanded. Moreover, it's stated that this prohibition zone is essentially the method for dealing with the eastern area, and that your plan is all to just shove it downriver and that's the problem solved. I don't see that's the problem solved. It wasn't the problem solved before. It's not the problem solved now. So with those two things, that's certainly a major concern of mine. There are some other changes in there that have become obvious when you look at the outline I submitted to, or the comparison document that was submitted to some of the players, and I think has been distributed. But at any rate, that is, in my mind, a major problem that's going forward, and shows once again, as Jack has said, is we had a bad situation before. This one's even worse. I wasn't sure it could be much worse, but for the eastern area, it certainly is. Not only that, but then, for example, when you talk about the western area, one of the changes that got made is on page 47, at least on that combined document. I'm not sure where it shows up on the original, but where 7.2 standard is an issue, and they were talking about when drinking water should be provided, first the bottled water at 3 ppb, and then goes on to say that if it gets above 7.2 ppb, then certain other provisions have to be made about long-term supply. Once again, this was raised from 7.2 ppb. It used to be in the first draft, it said 4 consecutive tests. Now it says 5 consecutive tests. So basically nothing was improved by what we got this time. And I'm pretty profoundly opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, Roger.
All right, well, I found some problems with it that no one's talked about. Let me share part of my screen here. So this is similar to Mike's comparison. I've had comparisons by section of the old one and the new one, and here's what it used to say in the prior 4th consent judgment version. You see my cursor okay on the screen? Yeah.
Yes.
And this is how it was replaced with for the marshy area. And similarly, this is what happened to the burn pit area. Completely ignored it in this new version. And this is for the people that don't understand, the burn pit is where the very highest soil contamination has been in the past. 2 million parts per billion in 1988. That had diminished by half to 1 million parts per billion in 1998. And we do not have any of the data taken in the same location since. It may be part of the secret data that that's covered under the confidentiality agreement. But the fact that this is not being addressed is a concern, a big concern. The burn pit is supposed to have been remediated with this heated soil vapor extraction system. That seems to have been removed. Similarly, the marshy area is supposed to have phyto remediation, and that has similarly been removed. This is a pattern that we've seen with DNR, DEQ, EGLE over the years. In the third consent judgment, going to the fourth, back in 2000, whatever it was, the spray irrigation system was removed. And of course, that's what the spray irrigation system is what led to the contamination in the third sister lake, where Dan Bicknell, as a graduate student, first discovered the dioxide. So there's ongoing contamination from that that's being ignored. I'll have something more to say in my chair notes later when we talk about what is a usable aquifer, which is a bad thing to consider when you have forever chemicals. Forever chemicals can get into the soil, can get into the shallow aquifers that were supposedly unusable, but the water in those aquifers in the soils, the dioxin still travels through those to usable aquifers. So to ignore those is a shame. Now, one thing I will say here about if these are removed, so let's take the burn pit, for instance. If the burn pit is not being addressed, does that mean all the data that was held secret because the confidentiality order, does that mean that that data can be released immediately so the EPA has a better idea what the problem is? If it's not in the consent judgment, does that mean that the data that led to this negotiation for this consent judgment, if this gets passed, does that mean the data immediately gets released, at least for those sections that are no longer part of the consent judgment? So that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Roger. Go ahead, Rita.
Mute, Rita.
We can't hear you, Rita.
Sorry, thought I unmuted. I obviously hit the wrong button. Wait a minute, let me get my notes. I just want to thank Mike Moran. You did, thank you for your excellent description of the shortcomings on the Eastern Area action plan. I'm just shocked to see continuation of dilution as the solution as being promoted as the strategy for how we're going to deal with this contamination. It's a tired, old, failed method for dealing with environmental pollution. In addition, I just want to point out that the approach of the contamination in groundwater at basement level within 10 feet of the surface is completely ignored now in this rendition. And decreasing the GSI criterion level to 208 parts per billion, that's going to improve protection, certainly compared to 2,800 parts per billion. But the recent publication by Bob Bailey and myself with Bob's calculations suggests that the 280 part per billion 1,4-dioxane in groundwater that's in contact with damp basements may allow harmful indoor air concentrations of 1,4-dioxane. So I'm really sad to see that that's just allowed to be completely ignored when in fact Gelman did a study on this very problem, you know, many years ago and acknowledged that this is going to happen, that the contamination plume is going to approach the surface. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kathy Griswold.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that CARD issue
a formal press release. The consent judgment is going to move forward, but we have a tremendous amount of expertise on CARD, and I think we need to capture all of that in a report so that during the EPA evaluation process, it will easily be available to the public, because there will be public comment periods as we move towards a Superfund site.
Thank you. I'm not sure that a press release is the best way to get to the EPA. The EPA will have a comment period, and we will be able to submit our comments directly to them, and they're very responsive.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Jack. Maybe I wasn't clear enough. I just think that all this expertise that we have tonight and this week, that we need to put it in some type of document so that it's readily available when we start talking to the EPA in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually we've started that, and there's a lot of this we have to work out within CARD to make sure we have it all covered, all the features covered, but we will have some kind of a review of this response to this fourth consent judgment.
Oh, okay, great.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kathy Knoll.
Okay, I wanted to respond to Jeff Hayner's question. The interveners were informed on Friday, March 24th, that EGLE and Gelman had reached agreement on a new draft CJ. The interveners were not involved in any of the discussions. We knew that discussions were underway, but the interveners were not involved in any way in the discussions. I mentioned last time at the last CARD meeting that there will be a status conference in front of Judge Connors on April 13th. In the past, these status conferences have been held in chambers, not in open court. But on April 20th, there will be a hearing regarding entry of this new draft CJ. And that might be a forum to consider expressing concerns about this CJ. I am assuming it's an open court. I haven't gotten any formal, we haven't gotten any formal statement or notice of it, but I am assuming it is. And also I want to add that procedurally right now, it's not clear what is going to happen to the interveners. Technically, they are still parties in this action. But remember, Judge Connors asked all of the interveners to delay filing complaints if they were going to file a complaint. And the county had already filed their complaint at that time. The judge also said, don't bother filing an answer until we decide what we're going to do. So everything is up in the air as I see it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, James.
Thanks, Jack. I'm following up to something Roger Rayle mentioned a moment ago. I want to follow up with Mr. Mosier and Ms. Allison Yoakum. Just to verify, if the burn pit stipulations are out of the fourth proposed court order, if there's no language with respect to that, can the data be released and either released from the confidentiality agreement?
I believe it's my understanding, and I'm a little bit new to this, so excuse me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
But it's my understanding that that data was collected by Gelman, and they're the ones who sought the protective order. And so I don't know that the state, either EGLE or the AG's office, has any ability to say that that data can be released on the basis that the burn pit was not included in the final consent judgment.
All right. I appreciate your clarification of this.
Thank you. Okay. Go ahead, Vince.
I just want to make one more point that Rita made earlier today, that the CJ, or the proposed CJ, does not describe near surface groundwater or shallow groundwater, even though we know we have contamination near the surface in the city of Ann Arbor, probably other places, but definitely in the city of Ann Arbor. It's acknowledged by EGLE and CARD and even the drain office now. So that's another omission. So thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
I just wanted to be sure that I understood what Kathy said. Did you say that after the county filed its complaint, that Judge Connors advised the other interveners not to file complaints and advised Gelman not to answer it?
That's
the county complaint?
Yes.
I'm sorry to hear that, and I guess I heard you correctly. Thank you.
Go ahead, Roger.
So, Danielle, I know you're not up to speed on this, and that bothers me. But it seemed like you're saying if Gelman has data about their dioxane in the burn pit area and in the water in that area, they don't have to release it. Ever. I mean, this is backsliding. The only way we know about the dioxin problem is if we have the data. And here we're presented with some solutions that purport to solve the problem without properly showing the data for what the problem is. So I don't know how we can even comment on this without having all that data. Not just the burn pit, but the marsh area and the ponds, former ponds 1 and 2. Those are sources of contamination. And those, the dioxin in those layers is making its way out to township homeowner wells. And it's going to make its way in the shallower contaminated aquifer to people with wet basements. This is a forever chemical. It's not going to go away in 30 years. It hasn't gone away in 50 years. So this is part, the legislature maybe can tighten the standards and get us back to something that protects the waters of Michigan, but we need the EGLE's got to be ready to act when that happens. You can't be working under the old assumption that we'll never have to worry about this. We have to worry about it now because it's happening now. And at every delay, the dioxin moves further and further away. Anyway, that's all.
Go ahead, Mike.
I want to beat to death this thing that's happened with the interveners filing or not filing complaints if I can. My understanding of the Court of Appeals order was that if you want to be a party, act like one, file a complaint. Give Gelman an opportunity to answer and then preserve its defenses, and then we'll try it. Did the judge enter an order that no other interveners should file complaints and that Gelman should not answer one?
No.
He just said that?
It was stated at one of the one of the status conferences. And
thank you.
Mike, if I may, I might be able to provide a little bit of clarity there. And Ms. Knoll, feel free to correct me if my understanding is incorrect, but it's my understanding that the court entered an order stating that the interveners should not file their complaints in advance of the next status conference, but that a schedule would be set forth at the next status conference where the interveners could file their complaints. and that would also direct Gelman and any other potential defendants, because at this time, EGLE is also one of those defendants in the county's complaint, what the time frame would be to respond to those complaints. I hope that's helpful.
Well, if it's true, it's very helpful.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
It was okay. Is it a written order entered in the court record that you know?
Yes, I believe so.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So I want to note that our Congresswoman has joined us, and I'm going to allow her to speak if she wants to. I thought she joined us.
Maybe getting her camera ready.
I don't see her name listed.
I'll let you know when she comes back again, Jack.
Okay. She was in the waiting room.
There's on the chat thing that her new aide was just saying that some problems have come up with her, technical problems with her connection.
So I think I've just admitted her again. Let's see.
iPad 2.
Congresswoman Dingell, are you here?
Yeah, I don't see her listed.
It's an iPad. It might take a minute to connect.
Alrighty. Well, I'll continue to watch for her and
try again.
Meantime, while we're waiting for the Congresswoman, I do want to point out another thing that some of you may not have noticed. I think we all agreed that dumping partially treated water back into the sister lake was a bad idea, and that's not in this version. However, there's an addition on page 49 where, if necessary, they may allow
Jack, which 49 of the
one that's unmarked, the one that the parties have signed.
Okay, let me
Section Roman numeral 7 D5 would allow dumping water into Little Lake, which is off from Parkview Plaza, and it doesn't really set any criteria for what makes that necessary or not necessary.
Is this the page you're talking about?
What's that?
Is this the page you're talking about?
No, that's it.
This is
yeah, right there at the top. Number 5, surface water discharge permits for discharge of waters into you keep moving it. Little Lake if necessary.
Right.
And I don't recall seeing that in the previous consent judgment.
Yeah, that's a new one.
So take note of that. Alrighty. I keep letting Congresswoman Dingell into the meeting. I'm not sure if she has made it. Are you here, Mrs. Dingell?
Oh, thank you.
Really delicious.
Do you have a pen?
Oh, somebody's getting dinner over here.
Oh, wait. Oh. More than dinner.
Yeah, boy.
Oh, Glenn, did you bring enough for everybody? I still don't see
That was a little embarrassing.
Not a problem.
Could have been worse.
It could have been a lot worse.
All right, any other comments while we're waiting for Congresswoman Dingell?
I have a general question. I noticed that the CJ only addresses 1,4-dioxane and no other chemicals, even though we know they used other chemicals. I don't understand the reason for that.
I don't have an explanation. Does anybody here have an explanation?
Well, there were other chemicals at the core site that were not as mobile as 1,4-dioxane to our knowledge. There were some other chemicals that were used in somewhat the same scale. DMF, dimethyl formamide, I think it was one of them. And that one has kind of been ignored. We don't know if that's still there.
Congresswoman Dingell is here.
Let me go back to the agenda. Just to remind everybody where we are in the agenda. We're here.
So we now have a participant labeled iPad number 2. I believe that's Congresswoman Dingell. Are you here?
Well, I am, but I've got bad reception. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, yes.
Okay. I'm here listening, sort of.
Well, we invite you to make any statement that you want to. We've been discussing the consent judgment that's been signed by the state and the polluter. And if you have anything that you'd like to comment on about that, Georgia has done well in representing your office here.
Can you hear me?
I can now, but I
clicked off. It's really bad reception. I'm sorry. I think it's losing me again. Okay, chat.
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Can you hear me now? Okay, I'm sorry about this. I'm at a bad place. But what I want to assure you all is that the EPA process is moving forward. And they're really doing the testing and getting the results. And I have personally spoken with the Attorney General. What they wanted to do was to make sure we didn't, and I asked my staff, I think she's there, read the statement that I worked on with Dana. But nothing in this consent decree is going to keep the EPA moving forward or harm the potential of this being listed on the national priority site. So that's what I want to, reassure you all on. Deborah Shore, the regional administrator, has been very hands-on on this. It's why EPA has started doing its testing when EGLE tests. And I just really want you to know, I've talked to everybody at the EPA. They make it clear that they're working with EGLE to make sure that people are safe. They've got the emergency response team on site in Ann Arbor. If anything comes up in a test that they've got, we've got to worry about. And I am staying very on point with EPA moving forward on the testing for this to be listed on the national priority site.
Thank you.
It would be nice if we had reassurance that EPA has access to the data that it needs.
I would say to all of you that I believe that they do, and I got to be careful here, but I believe that they are getting data that their data is strong. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to get in trouble or say anything.
So,
can you all hear me?
Yeah, we heard you. Prior to you entering the meeting, Roger was discussing the fact that a section of the consent judgment that we had rejected isn't in the new version addressing the burn pit area, which is one of the areas that is most highly contaminated. And we're afraid that without that being addressed by the consent judgment, that the polluter is not going to release data that they have regarding that area. And so when he asked about whether or not they had all the data they needed, I think he was referring to that.
Yeah, the marshy area and ponds one
there. Jack, can you get me that data? My staff's there at the meeting, Georgian's there, so I need to get what you think's not there, and I'll get on it in detail. This is not the ideal situation to be talking to you all.
Absolutely, we will make sure to convey that those questions to.
I think that's Jack talking. So.
Yes, it is. This is Jack Eaton, and we will convey that to your staff.
Hey, Jack, do you mind if I chime in on that really quick?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I hope I'm not stepping out of line here, but it's my understanding, and Dan Hamill, correct me if I'm wrong, that EPA knows the data that's under the confidentiality agreement. They haven't seen it yet, I believe, but they know it exists. And so that's part of their considerations as they're going through the site assessment on how they may go forward to try to get that data. So they know that it's missing from their data set. The fact that it's there shouldn't stop them from the listing process. But maybe by the time they get to, expanded RI and remedy selection, they could possibly have the data at that point. They don't need it for scoring the site. They don't necessarily need it for meeting the NPL requirements, but they would need it for remedy selection, which is down the road when this goes NPL. But they are aware that there is data under that confidentiality order by the court.
Yes, that is correct, Josh. Yeah. I made them aware of that early on when they first started assisting.
Yeah.
And so they know that that may be a data gap, and whether they get the data or get additional data on their own during this investigation, if there's a data gap, and they know about it.
Right.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Anything further on the consent judgment? All righty, I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the confidentiality agreement. I think we've handled that. I would ask Dan Hamill.
Did we skip the update? No, that was the EPA update. Never mind.
Yeah, Jack, what was your question?
So because of the confidentiality agreement, EGLE submitted an information request to the polluter, and we were waiting for that to run its course. Do you have an update on that?
No different than last month. We did submit a request related to allowed under Part 201. They have not responded and given us that information, and so we have not come up with what our next step will be. I will tell you, as things are complicated with the CJ, that's what we concentrated on more recently. So I don't have any information on the two pathways that having the judge lift the confidentiality agreement, or the separate that we sent to them at the end of last year, request under Part 201. So
I'm going to turn this over to you, but in respect of our clock, because we've burned up a lot of time on the CJ, anything that there's no change from the last
I will make clear that and move on. Yeah.
And maybe we can pick up our pace here. Go ahead.
The next item is Gelman's remediation update. As far as a remediation update, they have not done anything new related to the response activity order. That's usually where I discuss what, if they have installed new wells or whatever. They have all the wells that are installed. Roger, if I can share the screen, can I just pop the share the screen, or do you have to do something?
Let me make you a co-host. Hold on.
Okay. I can share a couple of, during I think would be beneficial during the discussion.
Pass it back to me when you're not sharing, when you're not talking about what's on the screen.
Yep. So Roger, I think you have to stop sharing your screen before you can share. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Dan.
He should be able to take over sharing, but I'll stop sharing just to be sure.
Yep.
And Dan, send me your whatever you're going to be showing afterwards, since you didn't.
Yep, as I've done that, and I will continue. What I have on here is, since you basically discussed, let me go ahead and what I have on here. Do you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, yes. I was going to go kind of a high level review of the current CJ, but you discussed it very much, in detail. So I'm going to skip through these locations. This is again the document that from the CJ, but monitoring wells have, like I said, have been installed, and we've discussed these locations. The Sentinel wells, Prohibition wells, and then the investigation area to the west. Now, what has not been installed is these two locations, which I also discussed last time, that will be installed as part of the new CJ. We need these locations that were part of the original 2020 CJ. So as soon as that CJ is signed, if and when that is signed, they will install these locations. They also will, if and when that CJ is signed, they will install the the extraction well in the Rose Well remediation area. That it may be a separate an installation or a conversion of an existing injection well, large diameter injection well that historically was used at the Gelman site, called IW2. So they will continue with those activities. Currently, they are following the monitoring plan as required under the third CJ. So they sample 30 to 60 monitoring wells per month and send that data to me, and I believe Roger gets the same copy of that data. So they also are continuing with the groundwater treatment that they are currently doing. Currently, last year they averaged 611 gallons per minute over the year of extraction and remediation and discharge to the under their NPDES permit to the unnamed tributary of Honey Creek. That is really until things move forward with the CJ, that is really what they are currently doing as far as remediation. And as far as what's in the text there of a new monitoring plan, that monitoring plan, once a CJ, if and when the CJ is signed, there will be a new monitoring plan after in the western area after these wells are installed. Then we will evaluate all existing wells in the western area and identify compliance monitoring wells that will be utilized to evaluate and monitor the non-expansion objective in the western area. In the eastern area, all new monitoring wells will be reviewed and evaluated. All new and existing wells will be reviewed and evaluated, and then the monitoring plan in the eastern area will be updated and modified to identify new sampling times, meaning how often will monitoring wells be sampled. So the monitoring plans will be modified once the CJ, if and when the CJ is signed. Let's see, attachment areas again, since
want me to jump back to the agenda?
No, I have an agenda. It's just a little out of order from me, but it's the same agenda. I did want to, the next item up is the Washtenaw County Health Department and EGLE well owner. I have here's the 2023 locations that will be sampled. Mm-hmm. We have, this is Liberty. And so they'll be sampling along that. This is the normal sampling that occurs in.
Can you zoom in on those areas? They're kind of small when you show it.
Yeah, let me, just a second. I got to move things around.
I think there's a zoom up there on the top. Yeah, that helps.
Yep. So, and then I do want to point out, and as I stated last time, that we have added areas to the north that we have not done before to relate, in response to the Scioto Township sampling that occurred over the last year and a half or 2 years. And so we've added some wells, residential wells up here that we will go back and sample and try to confirm the sampling that Scioto Township did. The analysis will be done using our 8260 SIM with a 0.5 parts per billion reporting limit. And as I stated before, some of the Scioto Township sampling was done using method 522. So there are several of the wells that may not, could be non-detect with our method between their reporting limit of 0.12 and our reporting limit of 0.5. So, but we are going to go back, and we've Jenny Kahn and I, we've evaluated those locations, mainly Jenny, and then we discussed them, and so we're going to go back and take a selected number. The total number that we proposed right for next year is 244 well locations as depicted on this map, residential well locations. So it will start here in May, approximately in May. The county does the sampling for us, and then we send it to the EGLE laboratory. They send it to the EGLE laboratory. Will start in May and be completed, before the end of the fiscal year in September. Most of the time they're completed in July and August. All the samples are taken.
Have you shared that list?
Yeah, I shared it. I've shared it with you during other meetings.
Shared before?
Yeah.
Okay.
We haven't added to it. Additional with new information we have in the past. I've added wells.
Just as long as I have the latest list.
Yep. Let's see here. What do we want? Then. Okay, the next item is the update on the MS4 violation with Washtenaw County Water Resources Commissioner and WRD. Basically, we've separated that MS4 violation from the CJ. So the WRD is taking the lead and working with Evan, but they are taking the lead in enforcing the elimination of the illicit discharge, basically illicit discharge into the Allen Creek drain. I called and made sure what update information I can provide here. They basically made contact with Gelman in an email and identifying the need to sit down and with a Teams meeting and or in-face meeting to go over the requirements, formally go over the requirements of the Part 31 process to and the MS4 violation. They have not gotten a response back from Gelman. That was several weeks ago. They made that email inquiry. So that is the latest from that. When I get information, I will bring it to CARD each month. I will definitely check in to see what the status of that is.
Mike has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. I couldn't see you. Go ahead, please.
That's okay, Dan. I just had a couple of questions. One, you said that there might be detections that I guess SIO found using 522, but not detected with your method.
That could be a possibility. Yes.
Yeah. My question is, have you determined that that's the factor? Or was that just a generalized statement that there may be a difference?
That was a generalized statement. I did not go back to each individual location, see what the results were, and see, whether it was positive, and see, whether it was below our 0.5. That was just a general statement to manage expectations. We are going back. We're going to go back and try to, and take some where they had positive detections. And but also other locations where they did not have detections. More of a check of the current status in that area.
Yeah, I thought that's what you meant, but I just wanted to be sure.
Yep, that was a general statement.
Secondarily, on the MS4 work that's being done now, there were some statements in the new proposed CJ4 that seem to reflect on MS4 and discharge into drains. Can you tell me what those were? And is there anything about what work is being done now to eliminate that additional discharge that would be affected in the new proposed CJ4?
What the new CJ4 was referencing is the GSI portions of that, and what it mentioned was, that that the Gelman under the CJ has to be in compliance with the GSI criteria under Part 201. That what it was mentioned is can't remember the exact test, but what was mentioned, including MS4. Any MS4 sewers. Now, that said, that's Part 201. What separately under Part 31, Gelman has been informed, and WRD is pursuing the requirements under Part 31 of eliminating any illicit discharge in a MS4 sewer. So the CJ just stops at the 201, but they are pursuing, WRD and the Washtenaw County Water Resources Commissioner will be pursuing to Gelman to eliminate the violation, MS4 violation that's under Part 31. So that they weren't really, it wasn't giving, it wasn't meant to, and is not interpreted to be giving them permission like that. And historically, so there had been some questions. They're just identifying two different programs, but also identifying that, they got to look in, even if it's an MS4 sewer under Part 201, we're going to be, evaluating that. And then they have separate obligations under Part 31 that that WRD and Washtenaw County Resources Commissioner will be pursuing.
Okay, but what you're saying is essentially that there's nothing in the newly proposed CJ4 that would legitimize what's Gelman, the problem they're trying to now eliminate.
Right. I mean, they can't. They'll separately. They're going to be have to they will have to follow and be in compliance with Part 31.
Yeah, we basically couldn't come to agreement on what MS4 compliance would look like in the consent decree.
Right.
So we limited the consent decree to complying with 201, and 201 and 31 have different standards. So we're acknowledging that, if you do this, you may be in compliance with Part 201, including discharge to sewers, because it's included in Part 201. But also in Part 201 is, you have to, you still have to comply with other laws and MS4 requirements in local jurisdictions. So we just had to narrow it down actually to 201 compliance. So.
Well, there's a reference in the proposed new one to Part 31, correct? I believe that's been added. Something about it. And what I'm trying to do is understand what the effect of.
That's my understanding, Mike. I'll confirm that. I'll check that out with your question. But that's my understanding what the reference, because in under the CJ, the Allen Creek Drain is MS4 sewer. So there was some, the GSI work plan in the eastern area was related to the Allen Creek Drain. So I will check that out to make sure your question is answered and there's full understanding that what I said is accurate.
Okay, thanks. Because there's a specific reference in the definition part, I think, or somewhere in there about part 31.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the two programs are crossover a little bit because our generic groundwater surface water interface numbers are developed under part 31.
Yeah, water quality.
So for everything that's not an MS4, that discharges below the generic criterion for GSI is compliant with part 31. So we have to reference part 31 for part 2.1 compliance for surface waters that are not MS4 sewers. But then there's a separate obligation under 31 and the MS4 for those.
Yeah, Mike, I think.
Well, it's a little tricky and nuanced, but they're commingled a little bit. But again, we had to stick to part 2.1 and compliance with GSI for non-MS4 stuff, which includes part 31 as well.
And my update is WRD has made contact and is identified, made contact with Gelman, an email, and is requiring a meeting to define and identify and define their obligations under part 31.
Just to clarify, Mike, the part 31 parts were removed in this latest. I can share the screen when it's time to show that.
Okay, there. I don't know who is next. Kathy and Rita I can see hands up.
So Rita's next. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My question is, I think that there was a plan for some additional wells in West Park. Is that correct? Or has there been a change?
The new, they're in the old 2020, there were wells down in West Park area. They were part of what was identified as a down gradient investigation. There were 3 locations. They have been removed. The specific locations have been removed, but there is still a down gradient investigation portion under this new CJ. There is still down gradient investigation required to monitor and track the contaminant movement in the eastern area. What will be done is then the locations will be finalized in a work plan for the down gradient investigation that will come after the CJ is signed. They eliminated the specific locations from before, but the requirement is still monitoring wells will be installed as part of the down gradient investigation. There's just not a specific location identified at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Vince.
So is there any kind of a timeline for Gelman to comply with your EGLE's request on the MS4 issue? Thanks.
Well, that's what WRD will, part of that discussion with Gelman is what are the options available and what type of timeline, so that with Washington County Water Resources Commissioner and WRD will work out with Gelman what they are expecting and what are the obligations and requirements under Part 31.
Yeah, so this has been going on quite a while. I hope that EGLE sets a reasonable time frame for them to comply. This has been going on for years, and at elevations that are disturbing to a lot of people. And I think 150 part per billion near someone's basement could be dangerous to the homeowners or businesses. And we've had 50 or 49 part per billion in West Park in past recent years. It's a slippery slope, but I think we really need to get on top of this and force Gelman to quit using our waterways for a dump dump process. And that's basically what I think is happening here. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, I wanted to mention, Dan said that some of the testing that had been done in Scioto Township utilized method 522. All of the testing that had been done in Scioto used method 522, just so that.
Yeah, I didn't mean it that way. I you know, all I was trying to point out is that there is a different test method do have different reporting limits. So there may be some wells that were positive before that come up as non-detect now, and wanted to manage expectations, but we are doing some confirmation sampling and see if any increase. You know, one thing is if it suddenly you had an increase, you know, it goes above our reporting limit, that will be identified.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to be sure people knew that all of the testing that was done in Scioto utilized method 522.
Yeah, and according to my stats that I have on the sampling, about 40% of those hits in Scioto Township would not be detected used by EGLE's current analysis method.
Okay, let's try to move along now. Okay.
Let's see, that was then under the GSI work plan for Allen Creek Drain, there have been work plans for the western and eastern area under the response activity order, the older CJ. They have submitted work plans. We have made comments on both. Once the new CJ, you know, these GSI requirements are in and still remain in the new CJ. Once the CJ is signed, we will revisit and revisit the work plans and review those related to any changes or, you know, basically there is not going to be any change. We had comments related to evaluating GSI. So we will revisit those work plans and start that process of the GSI investigations. The next one is the Water Resources Division and NPDES update. That's basically the NPDES update, renewal for the current discharge of the treated groundwater into Honey Creek. I do not have any new information. I check, and if there was no change from last month. They're still in evaluation. So managing expectations, I think, they're a lot closer, but I don't want to, I just don't have an update tonight. And then under the what's new, am I still sharing?
You can see it.
Do you see a new figure?
Yes.
Yeah, you're still.
This is the figure I showed last time. We did the third month, or in March, we have done the sampling with Ann Arbor Township, and the EPA did also sampled. And this is just my figure with our data on it for both EGLE and Ann Arbor Township. We had non-detects in March, and as you can see, the non-detects have been consistent since November. And so we don't have the, I can't present the EPA data. There is, that can only be presented by or released by the homeowner. And but what we are currently doing, we'll do now is basically do an evaluation, take a look at everything again, and then come up with what we will do in the future related to the 2433 residential well. And that evaluation will include whether we need to continue sampling or do additional sampling, and then also evaluate. We are currently providing bottled water because of the October 2022 result was above the criteria of 7.2. So out of precaution, we provided bottled water starting in December. We will reevaluate that and decide what to do and work with the homeowner there.
Right. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome. Any questions? I'll stop sharing, Roger, right? I need to hit stop sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to the next item. I don't see Patty here. Is Patty here? So let's move on to the Yale Superfund Research Program. Rita, are you here?
She's on mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have anything. There's nothing new to report. There's going to be a large meeting of the Center and Advisory Board in June, but I haven't had any recent communications with them.
Well, that fits our time constraints really well. So I'm going to move. Kathy Knoll, did you have anything more that you wanted to say about the intervener status? I think that you actually did a fairly good job of updating us earlier.
Yep, no more to say. Thank you.
And Mike, did you have anything more to say about Ann Arbor Township?
Yes, the March sample came back non-detect. And our next steps are that we have the township board has already approved the preparation of RFP to do wider testing throughout the area. And we expect to get some bids on that and then evaluate those and get approval, hopefully get approval from the board then to do wider testing within the area that we got the large hit in October, and then a smaller 1.9 part per billion positive hit in November. So
thank you.
That's all from us.
Mike, are you utilizing method 522?
Yes. We are. That's been part of the holdup, is that we've had some difficulty finding labs and lab time to get the 522 tests and then managing the cost. So we're getting proposed, or we have a proposal to get bids on now using 522.
Thank you.
That one would take sample about 24 residences in that general neighborhood.
How much does it cost per sample? Do you know? Or is that part of the negotiations?
It's not that simple, because there's cost of collection, cost of sample, which is not that terrible, then cost of evaluating the samples, and then writing the reports, and et cetera. And it's all the ancillary costs, which
right.
are the high ones.
So the more you get in one set, the cheaper it is per sample. Then.
That's been our experience. The individual samples are very expensive.
Okay. Kathy, do you have anything new to report on the Knights of...
I want to make a comment real quick.
There's no new information.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed Vince here.
That's okay.
Your background obscures your hand raising.
I guess I could change that. Sorry. Thanks for the call. Thanks for calling on me. But I just want to remind people that the Environmental Working Group says that 0.3 part per billion is the highest level that they would consider safe. EPA has said that 0.35 part per billion is basically what Environmental Working Group says, just slightly higher. So just so people know that Michigan is way above what science would indicate is safe for drinking over a lifetime. So thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting you, Kathy. Go ahead.
There's no new information.
All righty. Is James Damore still here?
I am.
Did you want to speak to the resolution that we sent on to our legislators?
I do. We did communicate to our entire state delegation representing Washtenaw County our desire to have the polluter's pay package that was introduced in the last legislative session by Yosef Rabi, that they do so again. And for Georgia's, for us benefit, I think I've copied Representative Dingell as well with respect to this. I did hear back directly from Jason Morgan. He is personally planning to reintroduce the bill. It may be part of a comprehensive package. I haven't spoken to him directly. I don't know exactly what the timetable is going to be. I'm under the impression that he may do that after the Easter recess. There's legislature is supposed to convene after April 11th. We will see what happens then, but confidence is high that at the very least he's going to reintroduce the polluters pay package and possibly some others related to kind of the laws that EGLE's been operating under. So stay tuned, and I'm very glad, very pleased that he's wanting to move forward with this.
And thank you. And thank you for all the work that you did to make sure that our resolution got forwarded to the full list of legislators. I appreciate your work on this.
Thank you.
Seeing no hands up, I'm going to move on to the bylaw revision.
I had a hand up. My hand didn't go up. Because I'm sharing the screen, I guess. That's why it didn't go up.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to mention that I have dug back through my comments back in the 90s when they did away with the polluter pay law. I went up to testify and wasn't allowed to testify because they had already made their decision, but I handed in my comments and I'm going to pass those along. James, if you send me a list of who I should send it to, because all the things that I mentioned in my comments have come to pass.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is the bylaws revision committee. Is there anything to report? Go ahead, Roger.
Oh wait, no, I had when I put my hand down, then it went back up again. That's really strange.
Alrighty.
Rita will make a comment here in a second.
Reactions, lower hand. There we go. Yeah, it's Rita's name on this, so.
Sorry, I had to stand up for a minute. Is there something you want from me?
Well, the bylaws revision committee, election of officers, we need people to step forward to. We wanted to add some people to the card officers and have the change in the bylaws. So, you know, we're looking for people to volunteer, or else I'm going to start nominating people. James and
well, I told Beth that I would do it, and honestly, I think we only need one or two other people at the most. It doesn't have to be a big deal.
Try to have more representation from the areas affected too, is what I thought.
It's just the bylaws committee. It's not going to be a big deal.
No, to have the people on the card board though, who are representing the areas, more of the areas.
Okay, so can I just say, I sent to Beth, I had this idea of a process that a committee of 2 or 3 people could go through the bylaws, update them, make them compliant, add this expansion of the board,
right?
Send it to the board for comments. And then that's why we don't need gobs of people on it. And then you guys can look at it and give comments back, and we come to an agreement. When the board feels like the bylaws are ready to go to card, then we send it out to everybody. What do you think of that as a process?
Yeah.
That would work for me.
And get it done this summer, basically.
Me too.
Oh, it'll be quick, I think. So if anybody wants to work with me, 1 or 2 people, I think could be enough, to be honest.
Do we have any volunteers in the room? Oh, come on. There's 27.
I'll be quick.
Well, we can do it as a document that we
I heard a sure from James.
That was me.
Yeah, I saw your hand go up. There you go, committee.
Yeah. And of course, I'll weigh in on it too, but I think we can do it. We don't have to actually have have a lot of meetings on it, everybody can take a look at the bylaws
Right.
and make their own
Yeah.
comments on it. And
Yeah.
then we can get together and
Yeah.
work out the differences and make it official.
I think it can go pretty quickly, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Thanks, Rita.
Well, then I'm going to turn it over to the chair for his update.
All right. So let me see if I can do this without disrupting too much here. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, I got notice that the fourth consent judgment proposal on March 24th, and I started going through it using the differences chart from the previous fourth versus the third. And this was something that was presented with the fourth CJ when it was introduced. And it's basically this document that's linked to my chair notes here. So it went through point by point, item by item, and basically did a summary of what the differences were. So what I tried to do is recreate that. And what I did was put it in, well, before I go into that, I'm going to show what Mike Moran did using Word. Took the original PDFs, put them into Word, and did a compare. So this is, for those who are used to seeing this kind of format, you know, you have the read out, you have what's new and what's struck, and comments on the side. So you can go through it this way with this link. So that's one way to do it, which is very beneficial because it's, you know, it covers every little change that they made. And you can get down to the point later here where, you know, they eliminate the burn pit and all that kind of stuff. But I was doing it a section by section. Not that one. Let me just bring it up again. So what I did is I took each of the PDFs and I made them into text files, and I compared them using Notepad++, and then did PDFs of the results. And so this is like side by side or top to bottom differences of each section, which I thought might be a little easier to read section by section. So you can see what was there before, what's there now. A lot of these changes had to do with things that already done. So in the old version, it said you're going to have some things to do, and the new version says they went ahead and did those things. And there's some word clarifications. But then you get down to the areas where they eliminated some things. And so this is the extraction well that was going to dump into the first sister lake, and that of course has changed. That they might use the old IW2 well instead. There's a whole section here about the eastern area groundwater extraction that was eliminated and changed somewhat. By the way, this anybody concerned about this TW19 being a typo for TW29? It's actually, TW29 was the replacement well for TW19. It wasn't a typo. It's not in the same location, but it's nearby. And again, elimination of, these are the monitoring wells that I think the Rita number 2 is mentioning, you know, the down gradient areas, and that Dan had mentioned that they don't have specific locations. They're going to renegotiate where those locations are, apparently. And then, of course, the prohibition zone boundary review that I think Jack mentioned. Was it Jack that mentioned that earlier? And then some of the Western area objectives have been modified accordingly. And again, here and here. And then there was a drop about the termination criteria for the Western area. You know, the original consent judgment had 500 parts per billion in the core area would be allowed to remain. And we've been asking that get removed, that was a problem, because you have 500 parts per billion in the core area, that dioxin is going to go someplace. And it's sad to see that that's still hanging around. Gelman property response activities changed quite a bit. In particular, this section here that was eliminated. You know, again, with the Gelman has taken this opportunity by the action of the appeals court to again loosen what they have to do. And that to me is backsliding. And I think there used to be a backsliding provision in all the rules. And of course, I already talked about the fire remediation of the marshy area being changed and the elimination of the burn pit. And these are two big, huge things, because the marshy area is still an ongoing source of contamination, even though it takes a long time, as is the burn pit. We've only had one plume map of the burn pit, and that was way back in 1990. I don't have my Google Earth mashup up here, but sometime we'll re-show that to show that it had already expanded beyond Gelman's property in that first plume map for the burn pit. And to have it eliminated is just bad precedent. I went ahead and compared those, by the way, all these first comparisons here were just from sections 5 and 6, Roman numerals 5 and 6. I went back and reviewed 7 through 25 and sections 1 through 4, and those are in these folders that I've linked to here, so you can go through and step through each of these similar kind of comparisons. And most of those were just number changes and things. And similarly for the ending points. So you can see there were some things here for the NPDES permit. A lot of these, some of this didn't change much at all, just slight wording changes. So most of this is boilerplate, but there are a couple places where it might be significant. I invite people to go through and look at it and see what they think. So that's what I've done here in the last week since learning about this new consent judgment. So one of the things that was interesting, because I was doing it sentence by sentence, and I was saying, where's the end of this sentence? Now, this took me back. As soon as I saw some of these, I said, because back in the early days, even before we started doing a lot of work with municipal government consulting, we did consulting for Institute for Continuing Legal Education. Raise your hand if you know what that is. EGLE. It's housed here at the University of Michigan. And so we were doing the data processing for EGLE. And Rudy Engholm, who was the coordinator with a contact person at the time, he was working on a project to make legalese more understandable to the general public. This is back in 1974, 75. I gotta try to find Rudy and say, well, what do you think of these two sentences? Now, is 1,000 characters in a sentence too much to grasp in one view? Or how about 800 characters? Anyway, so it was interesting to read through those longest sentences and to see that somebody went to a lot of work, probably on the Gelman side, to put in language that would benefit them. I invite all the young lawyers who might be reading this later to go through and see if you can determine what the goal of making these sentences longer was. Anyway, I thought that was quite an interesting side observation I had. And then I wanted to compare that with the original 1965 Order of Determination. This is before the DNR, before they had permits for this kind of thing. This is what Gelman was required to do. You can put things in this online treatment pond, but no wastewater going into that. And yada, 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 shall be disposed of in the ground or in a manner by means such facilities at any location shall not injuriously affect public health or commercial, industrial, or domestic water supply use. I got to say, they didn't do that. They did directly or indirectly affect those supply uses. And we're dealing with it now 50 years later. So sometimes the simplest things don't get listened to either. But when you made it 1,000 characters long, they'll probably even get listened to less. And there should be a lesson there for us going forward that, you know, don't let, I mean, this is simple language. It's up to the polluter to be good corporate citizens and not do anything that would injure the general public if you're going to be a good corporate citizen. So I think that's all I have. I'm still updating the Google Earth mashups with the data through 2022. It's a kind of a slog again because of all the mismatches between the various data sources, and I'll try to work that out. Invite anybody who wants to help with that to learn that process. Let me know. But I think that's all I have. Any questions?
Go ahead, Vince.
Thanks, Jack. So Roger, you know, we didn't really discuss much in this meeting, but I was wondering if you had a feel for where EPA was on this scoring process. There was comment that months ago that it could end in March and they could have a number for us at the end of March.
I only know what I learned through CARD meetings. So I'm nowhere ahead of you at all.
All right, thanks.
EPA's website says the draft should be available mid-March of the preliminary assessment.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe it's coming up this month. I don't know.
This is April. Let me go back to
that. Yeah, so this is Josh. I just want to confirm we have not received that report yet. We have not received the draft report yet.
But do you have any notion as to when you might get it?
I asked today. I'm sorry, a little late, but I asked today for our Superfund group who partners with EPA to reach out and see. So I'll have Dan provide an update when we get that.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I mean, I just want to hang this out there that I've been using that Chat GPT to analyze various things, even though the version I'm using stopped collecting data in 2021, or was stopped training on data in 2021, and so I've been asking it about stuff like the Gelman stuff that happened prior to 2021.
Yeah,
and it's all been kind of interesting. It hasn't been super interesting, but some of it has, some of it hasn't, and the way that it tries to be neutral in the way it understands and presents information has been very curious, and it really has, to my reading, has pointed out the various failings that we all know exist, and that order determination was a hoot because I've done it with that too, and it says, according to its AI brain, that they were told to stop polluting. It said it was issued by Michigan Department of Health, and it told Gelman to cease and desist discharging 1,4-dioxane in ground and surface waters and take action to prevent the spreads. So, I've been trying to get it to find out, hey, when they took this company over, did they do it using a legal method where they are able to shun responsibility for the previous company's pollution and all that kind of thing? And so if anything comes up out of my spare time noodling on this, I'll let the group know.
Well, of course, that the ChatGPT doesn't have all of the court transcripts, probably.
Is that accurate? Why would they do not? Well, I mean, supposedly everything's out there, but I know it isn't because it hasn't been digitized. So how could it be, right? So it has been interesting in what it's coughed up about various regulatory actions and failures to respond to those actions over the course of the last 70 years or whatever it's been. So.
Yeah. Well, the rules keep changing.
So yeah, it always says that at the end.
Yeah. So anytime you look at, whether that was a legal play or not, you got to look at what the rules were at the time.
Right. It's just been curious. I just wanted to share that real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. AI is taking over the whole world, so we better watch out.
I figured I could mine it for some insight somehow, but nothing really yet. I mean, a few things, but nothing that you wouldn't know, Roger. So
I don't know. It's hard to keep up.
I'm surprised your computer wasn't smoking.
You have to use AI to help keep up with AI.
Yeah.
So
my son informs me that Bing's version of AI is trained up to date and also uses instantaneous queries to gather additional information for its responses and calculations. So I might switch over and compare answers and see if I should move over to that one.
Yeah, there's been experiments where they have different AI chats talking to each other, how they're going to take over the human race, basically.
Well, I think we're getting a little off the agenda. Vince,
they don't need clean water. What do they care?
That's right.
Vince, you still have your hand up. I think that was just an oversight. I would note that in the most recent consent judgment on pages 8 and 9, it states the objectives for the eastern area very clearly and horribly, that the objective is to keep the dioxin plume within the prohibition zone as it moves to the river. I mean, that's their stated objective is to flush the dioxin through the 5th Ward into the Huron River. And
what page is that
on the one, not the marked up one, the one they signed, pages 8 to 9.
Oh, page 8 to 9. Okay, let's go back.
The eastern area objectives, and it's the most clear statement of their objectives, much more clear than the previous version, and it just shows how weak our state environmental laws are. So,
Jack, on that same issue, when you go down into the comparison and look at the part on the, I think it's on the method of expanding the prohibition zone, it reinforces that it's even more clear, and specifically excludes various things that they're planning to do with oh, the triangle property and everything else. Oh, just dump it all into the BC, so no problem. It's all going downhill anyway.
Yep. So,
yeah, that's exactly how I read it. And I had trouble seeing where, yeah, it was just really awful. Dilution is the solution. Dump it in the river. Let it blow away. We'll all be fine.
We also have the new vapor intrusion findings that Dr. Bob Bailey.
It's not really vapor intrusion.
But whatever. Liquid to vapor intrusion. Maybe. We need a quick name for it. Anyway.
I propose we have a separate Zoom session to go through the changes to the consent judgment point by point once everybody's had a chance to review the differences. And again, these are
to what end, though?
Well, we're going to need to comment.
To the end that Kathy Griswold wanted to have a summary of all the points by back. That's what I want.
Okay.
Yeah.
When the EPA opens it up to comment, we have to be able to demonstrate just how inadequate this instrument is. I mean,
EPA opens it. What do you mean?
I'm sorry.
The judge.
When Kathy first said press release, I actually didn't think that was a bad idea, because when this is signed, there's going to be articles written about it. And do we want to have, get some of our opinions out into the public arena? And that's where a short press release with the main points might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, it's a good that we have a consensus on that among members.
Kathy's got her hand up.
I believe that Gelman will continue to fight.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever is done. And so we've got to be, take the offensive here, and we have to be ready, because Rita, you're absolutely right. If CARD doesn't have a statement, then the news articles will just be good news. We finally have a consent judgment, and we have a lower standard. Yeah. And so we need to hear the other side of it.
Absolutely.
Well, also, one of the things I'm afraid of, the judge paused all of the pleadings in the case in anticipation of this agreement being reached. And I'm afraid that now that there's been an agreement reached, he's going to just dismiss all of the claims and say that the state has the authority to do this. They've done it. I don't need to hear any more complaints. That's my biggest fear. And so I suppose that issuing a succinct critique of this version of the consent judgment would serve a purpose of letting the public know how deficient this is.
Mm-hmm.
An EPA may listen to that too.
Yes.
All righty. We're down to the point on the agenda. Well, actually, it's 8 o'clock. It should be over with. But any non-agenda items anybody wants to discuss? Seeing no hands.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought that's where we were before, Jack. Sorry.
I think we were.
we may have been. The agenda gets away from me.
We should add a section for comic relief at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that
we need some comedians then, really.
I thought we'd gotten into AI and gotten off the agenda entirely, but okay.
Some of us have been doing that after the official meeting is over, so feel free to stick around.
So I have dinner waiting for me. I just want to remind you that the May 2nd meeting is Tuesday, May 2nd at 6 p.m. I'll see all of you. Further remind you that we won't have a July meeting. It was good to see everybody.
Yep.
And I'm going to sign up.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Nope.